Hold on a second. Let's put you to share to here. All right. Let's find out how long this one is. It won't tell me. This is only 44 pages long. So this is the Red Deal, Indigenous Action to Save the Earth, Part 3, Healing Our Planet. Part 1, who is the Red Nation? Principle, Unity, and Missions. Background, Principles, and Struggles. All right, Area 3, Clean and Sustainable Energy. Wait, is this the same one? This is not the same one, is it? Let me look here. Hold on, let me look real quick. Because I think this is a different one, right? Indigenous Action to Save the Earth. Indigenous Action to Save the Earth. The Red Deal. Part 3. That says Part 2. Part 3 says Healing Our Planet. Part 2 says Healing Our Bodies. All right, cool. This is different. I'm going to go ahead and start this one, since this is also short. Makes sense. Might as well go into this. All right, let's go over this one. This one is the Red Deal, Indigenous Action. This is Part 3, Healing Our Planet. The Red Nation. They have an internet. If anybody wants to look, it's called the rednation.org. If anybody wants to look into the Red Nation, rednation.org. Red Nation. Wait, ooh, Rim, are you you're not, oh, Rim, I'm going to drop you down. I'm doing a reading. Sorry. My bad. Part 1. So part 1 is, who is the Red Nation? Principle of Unity, Mission, 10-point program. I think they're going to go right over the 10-point program again. Part 2, what is the Red Deal? Principles, background, principles, and struggles. And in Part 3, healing the planet. So it might be the same stuff for the first 3 parts, which was not a big deal, honestly. Who is the Red Nation? All right, let's go over it again. Why not? Principles of Unity. We are the Red Nation. We are indigenous revolutionaries. We are comrades and relatives first and foremost. We practice radical democracy and compassion for all relatives despite differences in organizational roles and affiliation. We are equals in struggles, and we are anti-capitalist and anti-colonial. We are indigenous feminists who believe in a radical rationality. We do not seek to a milder form of capitalism or colonialism. We demand an entirely new system premised on peace, cooperation, and justice. For our earth and relatives to live, capitalism and colonialism must die. This is a theme. We belong to long traditions of indigenous resistance. We claim our rightful place among all freedom fighters around the world. We are not the first, nor will we be the last. We are the ancestors from the before and the already forthcoming. We carrying this history forward. We actively create the world in which we want to live in. We seek to not just challenge power, but to build power. We are not simply a negation of the nightmarish colonial presence, colonialism and capitalism, heteropatriarchy, imperialism and white supremacy. We are the embodiment and affirmation of a coming indigenous future, a future in which many worlds fit. We believe in all oppressed nations have the right to self-determination, to decide their own destinies. We, the Red Nation, are self-determining peoples. We enact the principles of freedom and integrity in how we seek to live as good people of the earth. We organize through education and agitation, revolutionary change. We encourage our relatives and comrades to believe in revolutionary change. We advocate for global decolonization. We agitate among the poor, the working class, and colonized, and the dispossessed to instill the confidence to fight back and take control of our destinies. We believe in the premise of the intellect, optimism of the will. We remain accountable to our people and our nation. We do not have perfect politics. We do not believe in factionalism and rigid ideology. We can die having had a correct position, but but have accomplished nothing and freed no one. The desire to be, quote, right or perfect is the highest form of cynicism. In our roles as revolutionaries is to cheerlead the movement at all turns. Above all else, we desire to be free and believe we will win. Optimism will thrive so long as we struggle for freedom. We believe in current ideas, which only come through revolutionary praxis and struggle. Our power and judgment comes from the labor of our struggle. We are not above the people. When the people move, we move with them. We are the permanent persuaders. We believe in revolutionary change is not only possible, but inevitable. Like our hearts, our politics are down and to the left. And because we are, quote, five-finger ones, our fists are size of our heart. We raise our fists to lift the hearts of our people. We give everything and take nothing for ourselves. We uphold personal and organizational integrity at all turns of the movement. Change is dialectical and full of contradiction. It often comes through notice or without being noticed. Reactionary tendencies and contradictions will seek to destroy our momentum, diminish our optimism, test our integrity. We will come in many and oftentimes unexpected forms. Even when in doubt, we pledge to remain faithful to our political principles and steadfast in our commitments in revolutionary struggles and optimism. We are the Red Nation. I'm going to reread the mission notes because I don't think everybody I'm going to go ahead and reread this. I know this is a new thing, but why not? Why not just go through it a second time? Because the other parts is going to be different. So why not go through a second time? Missions. The Red Nation is dedicated to liberation for Native people from capitalism and colonialism. We recenter Native politics, agendas, and struggles through direct actions, advocacy, mobilization, and education. Who are we? We are a coalition of Native and non-Native activists, educators, students, and community organizers advocating Native liberation. We form to address the invisibility and marginalization of Native struggles within mainstream social justice, organized and to foreground the targeted destruction of violence towards Native life and land. Areas of struggle. Indigeneity. We struggle for the defense and livelihood of Native peoples and lands. Indigeneity is a political condition that challenges the existence and domination of colonial nation states. Liberation. We struggle for reparations of Native lives and land. Liberation is not about healing or getting over it. It is a struggle for material and structural formations. Resistance. We continue a long history of Native anti-colonial resistance by reviving active resistance as fundamental to liberation. Coalition. We mobilize for widespread action and community engagement for Native struggles for liberation. All right. We're going to go over the 10-point program again. I know we did it earlier, but why not go through it again? Why not do it again, right? Why not? It just solidifies and it's a repeat. You know what I mean? Why not have a repeat? All right, 10-point program. We demand an end to violence against Native peoples and our non-human relatives through. Number one, the reinstatement of treaty rights. From 1776 to 1871, the U.S. Congress ratified more than 300 treaties with Native nations. A provision in the 1871 Indigenous Appropriation Act withdrew federal recognitions of Native nations as separate political entities contracted through treaties made with the United States. Okay. As a result, treaty making was abolished, and it was established that no indigenous nation or tribe within the territory of the United States shall be acknowledged or recognized as independent nations, tribes, or power with whom the United States may contract by treaty. We demand the reinstatement of treaty making and the acknowledgement of Native independence. We demand Native nations assume their rightful place as independent nations, guarantee the fundamental rights and to self-determination of their people, communities, land bases, and political and economic systems. Number 2, full rights and equal protections of Native people. Again, I'm going over this again because I think it's a good idea. What happened? Centuries of forced relocation and land dispossession have resulted in mass displacement of Native nations and peoples from our original and ancestral homes. Today, in the United States, 4 of 5 Native people do not live within reservations or federal land trust land. Many were and are forced to leave reservations and trust lands as economic and political refugees due to high unemployment, government policy loss of land, and lack of infrastructure and social violence. Yet, off-reservation Native peoples encounter equally high rates of sexual and physical violence, houselessness, incarceration, poverty, discrimination, and economic exploitation in cities and rural border towns. We demand that treaty rights and indigenous rights be applied and upheld both on and off reservation and federal trust land. All the North American and Western Hemisphere and Pacific is indigenous land. Our rights do not begin and end at imposed imperial borders. We did not create nor give our consent to it. Rights shall be enforced pursuant to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP, and the historical and political doctrines of the specific tribes. 3, I'm going to take a drink. End to the disciplinary violence against Native peoples and all oppressed peoples. In the United States, more than 3 million people are incarcerated in the largest prison system in the world. Native peoples and oppressed peoples are disproportionately incarcerated and persecuted by law enforcement. Within this system, Native people are the group most likely to be murdered and harassed by law enforcement and to experience high rates of incarceration. This proves that the system is inherently racist and disciplines politically disenfranchised people to keep them oppressed and prevent them from challenging racist institutions like prisons, police, and law that maintain the status quo. Racist disciplinary institutions contribute to the continuing dispossession of and death of Native peoples and lifeways of North America. We demand an end to the racist and violent policies of Native peoples on off reservations and federal trust lands. We demand an end to the racist state institutions that unjustly target and imprison Native peoples and all oppressed peoples. Number 4, the end to discrimination against Native people, Native silent majority, youth and the poor. Native youth and Native poor and unsheltered experience oppression and violence at rates higher than other classes and groups of Native peoples. Native people experience poverty and homelessness at rates higher than other groups. Native youth self-unaliving and criminalization rate continues to soar. Native youth now comprise as much as 70% of the Native population and experience rates of physical and sexual violence and PTSD higher than other groups. Native poor and unsheltered experience rates of criminalization, alcoholism, and violence at higher rates than other groups because many Native youth and poor and unsheltered live off reservation and trust lands. They are treated as unauthentic and without rights. Native youth and Native poor continue to be marginalized and ignored within Native nations, dominant political systems, and mainstream social justice organizing. We demand an end to the silencing of and blaming of Native youth and Native poor and unsheltered. We demand an end to the unjust violence and policing they've experienced. Native youth and Native poor and unsheltered are relatives who deserve support and representation. We demand they be at the center of Native struggles for liberation. 5. And the end to the discrimination, persecution, unalivings, torture, and rape of Native women. Native women are targets of legal, political, and extra-legal persecution, killing, rape, torture, discrimination, and disenfranchisement in North America. This is part of the ongoing process of eliminating women's political and customary roles as leaders in Native societies. In the United States, more than 1 in 3 Native women will be raped in their lifetime, often as children. Since 1980, about 1,200 Native women have gone missing or been murdered in Canada. Many are young girls. Native women are at high risk of being targeted for human trafficking and sexual exploitation than other groups. Native women continue to experience sexism and marginalization within Native and dominant political systems and within mainstream social justice approaches. We demand an end to the illegal, political, and extra-legal discrimination, persecution, killing, torturing, and raping of Native women. Women are the backbone of our political, customary government systems. They give and represent life and vitality. We demand that Native women be at the center of Native struggles for liberation. Number 6. I love these point programs. This is the second time I've read this, but this is a different one. This is part 3, but they're going back over this. But I feel it's okay to repeat these. 6. The end to discrimination, persecution, killing, torture, and rape of Native, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and two-spirit people, LGBTQ plus. Native LGBT plus people experience persecutions, killing, torture, and rape within Native nations and within dominant societies. The processes of colonization and heteropatriarchy impose binary gender roles, nuclear family structures, male-dominated hierarchies that are fundamentally at odds with Native customary laws and social organization, where LGBTQ2 plus people historically held positions of privilege and esteem. The effect of this system of Native LGBTQ2 plus is violent. Native LGBTQ plus experience rates of murder, sexual exploitation, hate crimes, discrimination, substance abuse, and homelessness at high rates. Like Native youth, poor, homeless, and women, Native LGBTQ plus continue to be marginalized and ignored within Native and dominant political systems, within metropolitan-based social justice approaches that ignore the mostly rural-based issues of Native LGBTQ plus. We demand an end to legal, political, and extra-legal discrimination, persecution, killings, torture, and rape of a Native LGBTQ plus 2+ in Native societies and dominant societies. Native LGBTQ2+ are relatives who deserve representation and dignity. We demand that they be at the center of Native struggle for liberation. 7. The end of dehumanization of Native peoples. The appropriation of Native imagery and culture for entertainment, such as sports mascots, other races' portrayals, and the celebration of G-sides for holidays and amusement, such as Columbus Day and Thanksgiving, dehumanize Native people and attempt to whitewash ongoing histories of G-side and dispossession. These appropriations contribute to the ongoing erasure of Native people and seek to minimize the harsh realities of histories of colonization. These appropriations are crimes against history. We demand the end of dehumanizing of Native peoples through cultural appropriation, racist imagery, and celebrations of genocide and colonization. Condemn symbolic and representational violence is an essential part of any material struggle for liberation. Number 8, access to appropriate education, healthcare, social services, employment, and housing. Access to equality, education, healthcare, social service, and housing are fundamental human rights. However, in almost every quality of life of life standards, Native people have the worst access to adequate educational opportunities, healthcare, social services, and housing in North America. Native people also have higher rates of unemployment on and off reservations than any other group in the United States. Access to meaningful standards of living is historically guaranteed under many treaty rights, but have been consistently ignored and unevenly applied across geographies and regions. We demand a universal enforcement and application of services to improve the standards of living for Native peoples pursuant to provisions in treaties and the UNDRIP, whether such peoples reside on or off reservations and land and trust lands. North America is our home, and we demand more than mere survival. We demand conditions to thrive. Number 9. Reparations of native lands and lives and the protection of non-human relatives. The ethical treatment of the land and non-human relative begins with how we act. We must first be afforded dignified lives as Native people who are free from performing or our purpose as stewards of life. If we are to protect and respect our non-human relatives, the land, the water, the air, the plants, and the animals, we must have the freedom of healthy necessary to make just, ethical, and thoughtful decisions to uphold life. We experience the destruction and violation of our non-human relatives wrought by militarization, toxic dumping, and contamination. The resource extraction is as violence. Human perpetrate this violence against our non-human relatives will be unable to live on our land and continue on as relatives recognized by the ancestors if this violence allows to continue. We demand an end to all corporate and U.S. control of native land and resources. We demand an end to tribal collusion with such practices. We demand that point 1 through 8 be enforced so as to allow Native people to live in accordance with their purpose as human beings who protect and respect life. Humans have created this crisis and continue to wage horrific violence against non-human relatives, as it is our responsibility to challenge this. Point number 10. The end of capitalism and colonialism. Native people are under constant assault by the capitalist colonial logic that seeks to ensure of non-capitalist ways of life. Colonial economies interrupt corporations and associations and force people instead into hierarchical relations with agents of colonial authority who function as a permanent occupying force on native lands. These agents are in place to control and discipline native peoples to ensure that we comply with capitalist colonial logic. There are many methods and agents of enforcement and discipline. There are the police. There are corporations. There are also so-called normal social and cultural practices like male dominance, heterosexuality, and individualism that encourage us to conform to the common sense of capitalist colonialism. These are all violent forms of social control and invasion that extract life from natives and other oppressed peoples in order to increase profit margins and consolidate power in the hands of wealthy nation states like the United States. The whole system depends on violence to facilitate the accumulation of wealth and power and to suppress other non-capitalist ways of life that might challenge dominate modes of power. Political possibilities for native liberation therefore cannot merge from forms of economic and institutional development, even if these are tribally controlled under the guise of self-determination. Our culture, they can only merge from directly challenging the capitalist colonial systems of power through collective struggles and resistance. We demand the end of capitalism colonialism on a global level. Native peoples, youth, poor and unsheltered women, LGBTQ2, and non-human relatives experience extreme and regular forms of violence because the whole system relies on our deaths. Capitalism colonialism means death to native peoples. For native peoples to live, capitalism colonialism must die. All right. Introduction. What is the Red Deal? So I want to get through this. Let's see here. Look at this. I think we're going to have to just do the best I can with what I got. And I think this is a lot of repeating, but why not repeat? Because it is going to go into new things. So introduction, the Red Nation. Our TRN invites allied movements, comrades, and relatives to implement the Red Deal, a movement-oriented document for climate justice and grassroots reform and revolution. This is not a region or national specific platform, but one that encompasses the entirety of Indigenous America, including our non-Indigenous comrades and relatives who live here. This is a platform so that our planet may live. We cannot expect politicians to do what only mass movements can do. Join us as we build this movement. No skirts required. All are welcome. Sokandin, I can't say it. Background. Purpose of the Green New... Okay, yeah, I'm not going to read that part. Actually, this was made with, before... I'm going to bring emphasis on this. This was made before AOC got bastardized. So this is long made before. So they do mention AOC in this, but then AOC has long betrayed this. So, yeah. Background. The purpose of the Green New Deal. Legislation is a step in the right direction to combat climate change and to hold corporate polluters responsible. A mass mobilization, one like we've never seen before in history. It is required to save this planet. Indigenous movements have always been at the forefront of these struggles. Democratic Socialists, not anymore. So this is the not anymore part. Democratic Socialist, Congress member AOC, the main proponent of the Green New Deal, is herself a water protector who began her successful congressional run while she was at Standing Rock protesting the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline. Thus, the GND and the climate justice movement in North America trace their origins to indigenous frontline struggles. With this background in mind, the red. Hold on a second. Yeah, the Red Nation. Okay, cool. My bad. The Red Nation is proposing a Red Deal. It's not the Red New Deal because it's the same old deal. The fulfillment of treaty rights, land restoration, sovereignty, self-determination, decolonization, and liberation. Ours is the oldest class struggle in the Americas. Centuries-long resistance for a world in which many worlds fit Indigenous people are best suited to lead this important movement, but it must come from the ground up. The Red Deal is not a counter program to the GND. It's a call for action beyond the scope of U.S. colonial states. It's a program for indigenous liberation, life and land, an affirmation that colonialism and capitalism must be overturned for this planet to be inhabitable for human and non-human relatives to live dignified lives. The Red Deal is not a deal or bargain with the elite and powerful. It is a deal with the humble people of the earth, a pact that we shall strive for peace and justice, and that movements for justice must come from below and to the left. We do not speak truth to the powerful. Our shared truth makes us powerful, and this people's truth includes those excluded from the realms of power and policymaking. In the spirit of the beginning of being good relatives, the Red Deal is a platform that calls for the demilitarization, police and prison abolishing of ICE, tearing down all border walls, indigenous liberation, decolonization, land restoration, treaty rights, free healthcare, free education, free housing, full citizenship, equal protections for undocumented relatives, a complete moratorium on oil, gas, coal, and carbon extraction and emissions, and transition to an economy that benefits everyone and that ends the exploitation of the global South and indigenous nations for resources, safe and free public transportation, restorations for indigenous agriculture, food sovereignty, restoration of watersheds and waterways, denuclearization, black self-determination and autonomy, gender and sexual equality, two-spirit, trans and queer liberation, and the restoration of sacred sites. Thus, the Red Deal is red because it prioritized indigenous liberation on the one hand and the revolution left position on the other. It is simultaneously particular and universal because indigenous liberation is for everybody. There will be where will we get the resources to achieve this monumental task? We call for the divestment away from police, prisons, military, and fossil fuels, four of the biggest drains on public spending, the reinvestment of common humanity for everyone, including health, dignity, and well-being, as well as restoration of indigenous lands, water, air, and nations. Principle 1, what creates crisis cannot solve it. Going through these principles again. Who else is here? I hope I got it. I think I got another one. Let's see here. I only got 98. Oh well, let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One more. And then we'll do. And we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I guess one more. There we go. That's as best as I can get it to even. What creates crisis cannot solve it. We've all heard the term divestment during the DAPL uprising in 2016. Water protectors called upon masses of divest from financial institutions, investing in the pipeline as a strategy to reduce harm to people and the planet, and specifically indigenous people. The Red Deal continues this call for divestment from fossil fuel industries. We go one step further. We draw from Black abolitionist traditions to call for divestment away from caging, criminalizing, and harming of human beings, and from the exploitative and extractive violence of fossil fuels. But divestment is only half of the equation. What will we do with the resources that will become available once we divest from prisons, military, and detention industries and fossil fuels? As in 2015, military spending accounted for upwards of 54% of all discretionary spending at the federal level. Proposed discretionary spending of national security in 2020 comes in at 750 billion, 718.3 billion of which is slotted specifically for the U.S. military in a given year. The U.S. provided 3.8 billion in military aid to Israel. 182 billion is spent each year on cops and prisons, and eight white dudes, all except one, an American citizen, own over half of the world's wealth. This doesn't even include the revenues from fossil fuel industries. Compared these figures to the 68 billion allocated for education in 2018 and the 186 billion allocated for mental health services in 2014, and only 66 billion in discretionary funds were spent on healthcare each year, with 5.4 billion allocated to indigenous health services. Despite this allocation of resources, healthcare is still unaffordable for almost half of the Americans. Despite treaty and federal obligations, Native people, especially those living in urban locations, experience the worst healthcare of any demographic, and industries like pharmaceuticals control public services through lobbying and getting millions of people hooked on opioids. These already low allocations for health and human services aren't low enough for the ruling class and their elite friends in government office. The U.S. government is threatened to cut spending on education, healthcare, food stamps, and other crucial health and human services in order to further inflate military spending. Imagine if the U.S. military had to hold a bake sale to keep its doors open instead of preschool, domestic violence shelters, art and language programs, and family planning clinics. This is what the Red Deal proposes. Instead of scraping pennies together to salvage a barely livable life, imagine if we had over trillions of dollars to invest in healthcare for everyone, to increase teachers' pay so they can provide quality, free education to everyone, to repair roads and provide safe and accessible public transportation for everyone, to invest in large-scale language revitalization programs in every indigenous nation on the continent. There is an overabundance of resources that go into demonizing indigenous water protectors and land defenders, Muslims, black people, Mexican, women, LGBTQ plus, and poor people, while the health of the earth and human beings receives barely a sliver of attention of resources. With the resources we gain from divestment, we could end world hunger, illiteracy, children hunger, houselessness, and build renewable energy tomorrow. Literally. 2. From below and to the left, several states have passed anti-protest laws in the wake of Black Lives Matter and NODAPL, with 20 more current considering similar laws. This backlash proves that people who demand a dignified life threaten the powerful. It has been forgotten that the current GND legislation was only possible because its main advocates, AOC, was inspired by the NODAPL uprising. Indigenous people are and have always been at the forefront of the struggles for climate justice. While politicians withdraw from the social justice demanded of the GND, like healthcare, housing, and education, we embrace them. But we know that we must go further. We must throw the full weight of the people power behind these demands for the dignified life. People power is the organized force of the masses, a movement to reclaim our humanity, our rightful relations with our earth. With this, not only will we topple power, but we will build a new world from the ashes of empire, a world where many worlds fit. There can be no rich people without poor people. The rich depend upon the poor, but the poor don't need the rich. This is our power, people power. Although indigenous people live in a capitalist society, we continue to practice people power. For example, Pueblo communities feed for nearly every ceremonial event. The original purpose of this was to prize surplus from those who led more wealth and redistribution it amongst those who didn't, so that neither the poor class nor a ruling class could form. Everyone's material needs were met. There was no starvation, no houselessness, no alienation. Everyone was a relative, and everyone had relatives. Capitalism destroyed this world. We must destroy capitalism to bring it back. People power is the most direct form of democracy. Everyday people decide what's best for themselves, not the elite and the powerful. The wealthiest in the world have refused to pay taxes for more than a century, while indigenous people starve and die of preventable diseases. We believe that crying on the shoulders of men who stole our land is the opposite of people power. We cannot smudge the schmurder out of capitalism, nor can we expect the powerful to give up their wealth out of the kindness of their heart. So how do we get things to change? Lobby Congress and politicians? No. We reach out directly to our people, hitting the streets and galvanizing the support of community. Once community support is established, politicians will follow. Our leverage is people. Leverage comes from the movement behind you. Only when people move do we build enough power to force concessions and eventually win. Number 3, politicians can do what only mass movements can't do. Everyone has learned the term reform. Politicians use it all the time when they're describing their plans for social change. They believe in reform too. But are purposing a different kind of reform. Reform typically means asking the powerful to implement gradual changes that we hope will eventually improve our lives. This approach attempts to treat the symptom of crisis rather than the structures of power that create crisis in the first place. For example, in March 2016, white police officer Austin Shapley had a mandatory lapel camera on his uniform when he murdered 27-year-old Dene mother Laurel Tenzing in broad daylight in Winslow, Arizona. Lapel cameras are often cited by police reformers as a necessary deterrent to police violence and unaliving. Yet Shapley murdered Tenzing with impunity and faced no charges. Cops in Winslow continue to harass and harm our relative. In the same year that Tenzing was murdered, police arrested over 800 water protectors, brutalized and traumatized countless others at Standing Rock. At the same year, police killed Native people at higher rates than any other group and killed Native women at 6 times the rate of white women. Yet when proponents call for murdered and missing indigenous women and girls reform, the solution is more police to address the unaliving, raping, imprisonment, and torture of Native women. In 2018 and 2019, we saw an increase in deaths of indigenous children in migrant detentions along the U.S.-Mexico border. We witnessed the shooting of U.S. Border Patrol of Claudia Patrice Gomez Gonzalez, an indigenous woman from Guatemala. And we mourn the deaths of trans indigenous women Roxanne Hernandez in an ICE detention facility. Immigration reforms have called for Border Patrol to keep families together and have also filed lawsuits to call for construction of more humane cages for these families and individuals. More humane. I don't know. The question these reforms ask is, how can we improve?
I don't think you achieve that unless it's super authoritarian.
Should be lobbying to make these improvements. Instead, we ask, why are police considered the solution to the crisis of indigenous life? Why do we even need the police? Chengla Margra, abolish ICE, and no ban on stolen land are not mere slogans. They are demands for dignified life. The police, military, and border patrol exist to protect the interests and wealth of the elite. Instead of providing homes, healthcare, and food, all we get are more cops, more soldiers, more walls, more poisoned water, more cages. The interest of a few always outweighs the needs of the many. This is how power works in the world structured by capitalism. Reformists misunderstand this fundamental truth about capitalist states. State protect capital and the ruling class, not life. This is true for police who protect private property while caging and murdering people. This is true for military police campaigns that protect the interests of multinational corporations by bombing villages, schools, and mosques. Reformists who appeal to the state for change compromise our future. We refuse to compromise. Our philosophy of reform is to relocate social wealth back to those who actually produce it. Workers, the poor, indigenous peoples, the global south, women, migrants, caretakers of the land and the land itself. The types of reform we seek include the complete moratorium of oil, gas, coal extraction, the restoration of indigenous land, water, and air to healthy states, the special protections of workers and the land. These non-reformist reforms are crucial to achieving abolition, decolonization, and liberation. Where will we get the money to fulfill these reforms? We will dispossess the wealth of corporate polluters and settler governments and redistribute it to the masses, restoring dignity and creating jobs to caretake and heal the planet and build our collective futures. 4. Theory to action. Let me look. What page is this? 19. Let me look. All right. I think I'll do this and then areas of action. Wait. What was it? Oh, from the theory to action. Hold on. Was I? Yeah, from the theory to action. Let me look. Let me make sure. Sorry, everybody. Yeah, from the theory to action. Bosses run the world, from the White House to the highest executives of the multinational corporation that plunder the earth. Yet there is no unified left that poses a real threat to the bosses. We have witnessed massive grassroots rebellions against the fossil fuel industries, police violence, racist immigration policies, and labor exploitation. Yet nothing has coalesced into a unified mass movement. We believe that struggling for these reforms to restore the health of our bodies and the earth will serve as the most powerful vehicle for building a mass movement. We cannot simply be against something. We must be for something. We will make recommendations that can be used at any time of governance, from the grassroots to the tribal councils to the city councils. We cannot turn away from the state because the state has its sights set on us at all times. Indigenous people know that every moment of our existence is mediated by the state. It is illegal to give birth in our traditional homes without state permits. We aren't even allowed to visit our sacred sites that lie within federal lands without proof of identity. The state harasses us wherever we go because we are not supposed to exist. We are supposed to be gone, erased off the lands the U.S. so desperately wants to exploit for profit. However, we do not appeal to the state to right these wrongs. Instead, we must organize and agitate wherever the state has set its sights amongst urban indigenous youth, women, migrants, black people, LGBTQ plus, or our sacred mountains and waters. We cannot simply build isolated utopias while the rest of the world burns, nor can we await for the slow process of reform to kick in. We cannot simply heal our individual traumas, nor can we consume better to save the environment. We cannot vote harder and place all our hopes in a few individuals in Congress. Climate change will kill us before any of these strategies liberate the planet from capitalism. By fighting for non-reformist reforms in and with our most vulnerable communities, we will drain power and resources from state surveillance and harm the reinvestment these resources in the well-being of all. We will regain our collective power. We will be inspired by the visions for the future that will outpace the state at every turn. We will be disciplined and organized to capture the momentum of the next rebellion, to catapult it into a full-blown mass movement. We will fight for the redistribution of the wealth stolen from us, whether it's land, water, air, or labor. We will carry each other's dreams and dignity in our hearts. We will remain steadfast in our commitment to each other. We will seek peace and right relationships between all life. We will do this in such a way that adheres to the principles of abolition, anti-capitalism, decolonization. Join us in this struggle. Let me look at the thing here. So that was just a repeat. Let's see here. What is this? Exclusive summary. I think, let's see here. I'm going to look at this real quick. Areas of struggles in the occupation and divest from the following military policies to fund the... Yeah, I think this... Let me look at the other part. Hold on a second, everybody. I'm going to make sure. What's this number? 20. Number 20. Let me look at something. Just looking at something real quick. 20. Okay, that. Okay. So it looks like a little bit of repeat until I hit the 26, which is 6 more pages. Then it gets into clean and sustainable energy. So like, that's when it's going to start the new stuff. So it is close to ending now. So let's end it here for right now. Areas, you know what? Hold on. I might just do the areas of struggles. Let's just do the areas of struggles and then we'll end it. It's not too many. It's just 3. Areas of struggle. 1, end the occupation. Divest from the following police and military institutions. Defund police. La Magre Child Protective Service. End border town violence. Abolish incarceration, prisons, juvenile detention facilities, jails, border security. End the U.S. military occupation everywhere. Abolish imperial borders. 2, heal our bodies. Reinvest in following institutions and services. Citizenships and equal rights for everyone. Free and sustainable housing for everybody. Free education for everybody. Free health for everybody. Free accessible public transportation for everybody. Self-unaliving prevention and non-carceral mental health services. Healthy, indigenous, and abundant food for everyone. Clean water and air. Sexual, domestic violence services and reproductive justice. End MMIW G2. Healing our planet. Create jobs by reinvesting in the following: clean, sustainable energy, traditional and sustainable agriculture, land, water, air, and animal restoration, above and below ground, protection and restoration of sacred sites, enforcement of treaty rights and other agreements. And that's where we'll stop. I will stop on executive summary. Executive summary. We're on the third one now, everybody. So yay. Yay, yay, yay. Yeah. Anybody have anything they would like to say or anything? I'm on the third volume. So it's basically the same stuff repeated and stuff like that. Going over it. They're going through their 10-point program, their struggles, and everything like that. So, and it's a bit of a repeat of the same, the second one. So we'll get to the meats and crusts on this. This doesn't seem like this I'll probably be able to finish it tomorrow. And then I'll start off with the communist necessity. It just makes sense because it's like what? This is only what? 44 pages long. So, yeah. And I just read 22. Stop. And there goes the dogs. All right, everybody. Thank you for bearing with me for repeating the same thing, but we'll get through this. I think this is good stuff. You know? I think people should, it had a website. It's called, let me make sure, 22. Let's see, what was the website? I'm going to say the website again.